what is MCART? Medical Countermeasures Against Radiological Threats. So that's our acronym. That's what we call ourselves. The purpose of MCART is to take a product, a drug or a biologic, from initial efficacy screening through FDA-approved licensure for indication to treat lethally irradiated personnel in the aftermath of a terrorist event. And this all has to be under the criteria of the FDA animal rule. So how do we do this? Well, we need people and money. So the people, we have a consortium that we've established. We have a principal investigator, and the primary contract is located at the University of Maryland. We are really the sole contract to develop medical countermeasures to treat lethally irradiated people. The sole contract in the world. There's no other countries that do what we do. If you go to Israel, we just had this Minister of Defense person come in a few weeks ago. Everybody relies on the U.S. They're doing it. We're spending the money to develop medical countermeasures. They'll take our lead. So it puts a lot of pressure on us to do that. And what we did is we developed this consortium. So right now our consortium consists of 7 active components. We have 2 universities, the University of Maryland, of course, in which we have 2 research components there. We have Indiana University. We also have 1 institute, Lovelace Respiratory Research Institute out in New Mexico. We have 4 companies. They're all located there. Some of them are develop medical countermeasures. Others are related to IT and GLP, QA stuff and all that. And then just to indicate to what we do in the state of Maryland, part of this money we fund at the Maryland, greater than 100 people are funded based on these contracts. Now what about the money part of this? It's absolutely critical. We can't do this without dollars. So we are now in the 2nd successive contract funded by NIAID, the National Institutes of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. The first contract was $50 million over 5 years. That's how we formed our consortium. The second contract, in which we are now finishing the 4th year of that contract, it will amount to about $60 million. So in these 2 contracts, we will have spent over $100 million to develop medical countermeasures. That's our base contract. We also have additional funding coming in. And these are all from the feds. So I don't know if you know about BARDA, Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, NIAID, as I mentioned before. So we also have a contract from BARDA. And that contract is for over $50 million, again, over 5 years. So currently, our group at the University of Maryland is working on roughly $100+ million over the 5-year period. We also just brought in a very small contract, this was just several months ago, with $1 million. It's essentially a 6-month contract. The key point I want to make to you here as well is that this contract went through Mission Viejo, California. That's where the corporate sponsor is located. They developed the medical countermeasure. They don't know what to do or how to treat that. That's what we do. This company here is from Memphis, Tennessee. So again, from the state of Maryland aspect here, we're bringing federal bucks that go to this contract, but we're the group that does all the testing for efficacy in that. So we have brought in these dollars to the state of Maryland via California and via Tennessee. So what's the difference, get my hand here right, between the requirements for clinical use when you walk in a hospital every day, somebody's getting treated with drugs, versus those for treating personnel, again, in the aftermath of a nuclear terrorist event? Well, the difference is context. So think of the chaos involved relative to the clinical environment, which is structured, very well defined. You walk in there, the doctors and nurses know exactly what's going to happen to you. You're in a very clean environment. Now go to a post-nuclear environment. It's chaos. Think of Katrina. Not only that, but we have to triage the people. You walk into a hospital, everybody knows what's wrong with you, you get treated that way. After a nuclear event, no one knows what dose of radiation you've received, because every organ system is dose dependent. Blood-forming system, gastrointestinal system, and the lung, all different doses. Multiple organ injury, you have to be triaged. How soon can you be triaged? Critical time factor to initiate treatment. After lethal doses of radiation, time is critical as to when you initiate the medical countermeasure. Not so much in the hospital because you can do it when you want. The FDA comes right back into the scene again now. Who has to approve drugs in the United States? The FDA. So the FDA says, how the hell do we do this? This is very different from the clinic. These people are lethally irradiated. You cannot ethically conduct clinical trials. By the way, I should mention to you, this is the same for biological and chemical. So I could be a chem guy or a biological guy standing there to tell you the same thing. The FDA animal rule applies to all of this, and you'll see why. So if this is different, if the whole context is different, do we have a different set of regulations and guidance? Absolutely we do. And we have to adhere to that. So what regulations and FDA guidance documents govern the development of a drug to treat personnel exposed to lethally irradiated or to lethal doses of radiation after a terrorist event? Pardon that little bit of redundancy, but it's so clear that you have to make this transition. It's the same thing the FDA had to do. In a way, we've been educating the FDA for the past 10 years. So, two key documents. If you're not aware of the fact that back in 2002, the FDA issued the FDA Animal Rule. And here's the reference for that. They also put out two guidance for industry or corporate sponsors to conduct these trials. And these are our Bibles. We have to completely understand how to work within FDA guidelines because we want every one of these drugs to be FDA approved to treat people. I will tell you at this point right now, there are no drugs approved to treat people that are lethally irradiated after a terrorist event. None. But I'll show you two that will likely be approved, two that we worked on at Maryland. So, is there additional clinical benefit for drugs that are found to show efficacy to treat personnel? And absolutely there is. So what the feds have done, BARDA and NIAID, they said, look, we don't want to develop a drug or pay this $120 million, or we're working on $150 million now. If we just stockpile the drug, it sits in a stockpile someplace, its biological half-life or physical half-life degrades the drug. If the company isn't now in the market and have a drug into the clinic, the company folds and goes away. What happens to the drug? The government may have spent $200 million to buy enough drug to stockpile it, and it's no longer there. So now the sponsor must define a concurrent clinical path for use of that drug. Now, there were two motives here. The government responded just like I said to you. They thought, geez, we don't want this drug just to fade away. We have to have that drug if it works, based on spending, say, $50 million to do it. So this dual use now provides for a managed inventory. So take a drug, one of the two I'm going to talk to you about in a minute, Neupogen or G-CSF, if you're aware of that. If you have any relatives that have been and have cancer chemotherapy, likely they were treated with Neupogen in the hospital. It is an FDA-approved drug to treat chemotherapy-induced neutropenia, not to treat lethally irradiated people. However, that drug is available worldwide. No problem getting that drug. So what the government will do is give Amgen, who owns that drug, I'm just going to throw out a number, $50 million a year to produce enough, say 10% more of that drug, and put that at their different stockpiles. Now the government knows that drug is approved to treat lethally irradiated people, and it's available worldwide. Throw it on an airplane, it gets anywhere in the world within, 6, 8 hours, 10 hours. The other thing is a drug doesn't necessarily have to be approved. It can be used under an emergency use authorization. And this is also part of what the government and the FDA are involved in, because it may be quite a while before we actually get an FDA-approved drug to treat people. So this is the key here. This is benefit to all. So people would ask us, part of these frequently asked questions, why are you spending all of this money just for a drug for an event that may never happen? Well, this is why. This is all part of the whole biotech community. We want to develop more drugs. The drugs have an absolute clinical benefit. It's imperative that if we're going to spend hundreds of billions of dollars to develop a drug to treat lethally irradiated people, it has to be used in the clinic. How many people are walking into a hospital today to get that word from their physician that they had cancer? How many people are experiencing terror in their lives today relative to the terror we would see here? So it's really, it's a program that has remarkable benefit to all. So now I just mentioned two recent successes at the University of Maryland. So just to emphasize what we do, we are the group that will utilize the FDA animal rule, that will utilize the guidance documents and conduct GLP-compliant pivotal trials to show efficacy of these drugs to enhance survival. So two of these were, this was the Neupogen, was recommended for approval by the FDA Advisory Committee in May 2013. FDA is now working with Amgen to eventually get this drug approved to treat lethally irradiated people. We also recently completed a trial with Neulasta, which is pegylated G-CSF. Amgen also owns this drug. That data package was submitted to the FDA in 4/14. So these will likely be the first two drugs approved to treat lethally irradiated people, to treat the hematopoietic syndrome or the blood-forming syndrome after a lethal dose of radiation. All done at Maryland, all done with money coming into the state of Maryland with our expertise. Absolutely remarkable when you consider there are no drugs approved to treat this. And we're working with drugs for the gastrointestinal and lung system as well. So how do we move forward? When we sat down and talked about this, somebody said, well, what are we going to ask these staffers to do? And it'd be crazy for me to stand up here and say to you, I need $50 more million. Sure, I need $50 more million.
I'll take it if you don't need it.
But I think what we need to do is interact. I would ask you, if you're interested in this aspect of it, get involved, understand who BARDA is. In fact, the feds have a program. The acronym is PHEMCE, P-H-E-M-C-E. It took me a while to actually get this acronym straight. But it's the Public Health Emergency Medical Countermeasure Enterprise. And they're all under HHS. So if you're interested, get involved in this. Help Maryland be better than we are today. And reach out to additional states as well. Thank you so much for your attention. I appreciate that.